Hey guys, project-zodiac here. I'm back with another video, and as you guys can see, this is a TV show review, and it's another video in the Tron series. So yes, I've been releasing a lot of Tron related videos because I recently got a identity disc, and I love it. So if you haven't seen that video yet, please watch it, where I unbox and review a fully functioning Tron identity disc. But with that said, so this is my review on Tron Uprising, and I'm so excited to talk about this show. But two quick disclaimers. One, this is a very long video, so I'm not going to really be doing any editing with it. So it's really just going to be the picture of the thumbnail. So listen to this basically as you go about your day doing the things that you do, and kind of like a podcast. So that way you guys can just hear along. And the second disclaimer is that there will be spoilers for all of Tron Uprising, and I have so much to say in regards to this show compared to what I had to say about the graphic novel and the games. With all that said, let's just get straight into this because I'm so excited for this show. So Tron is a series that I love, and Tron Legacy captivated me so much, and it released around the time that Avatar and Xenoblade did as well. For me, these three go hand in hand, and it all resonates so much with me. When Tron Legacy ended, the movie, I wanted more. I knew about the first movie, and it was good. I did watch it, but I wanted more than just these two. I knew about the game Tron Evolution, but I never played it until last year in 2023, which, as you guys see, I already made a video on. So I also, at the same time, though, didn't know about the graphic novel Tron Betrayal until last year. Same thing for Tron 2.0 and its comic as well. But with Tron Identity also having just come out last year, I was really excited to play that game, and I loved it. So if you guys haven't seen the review for that, please watch that. I don't know if I released it yet or if I'll be releasing it after. It makes sense if I'm releasing it after this video. So yeah, going on from Tron Identity, I was just really excited that we were getting more Tron things, especially with Tron 3, which is now called Tron Ares, coming out next year. I'm just so excited, and you know, for me, I just love these three series that I talked about, Tron, Avatar, and Xenoblade. And I also love how at the same time, basically, they're getting new content in their series. So it kind of feels like what it did when all three of these released, which I did talk about a bit in my Tron Betrayal review. Anyway, so last year I played Tron Evolution for the first time, and I also read Tron Betrayal for the first time, and both were amazing. I still have to play Tron 2.0 and read its comic, and I already did play through Tron Identity. So there are still a couple of other Tron things that I need to look at, but either way, I'm just so excited for those things. So there was, though, one thing for Tron that I had to also watch, and that is the one thing that I knew about when Tron Legacy came out, other than the game Tron Evolution, and that is that there was a prequel show called Tron Uprising that was going to be coming out. So when Tron Legacy released, and I was so amazed by the movie and then saw that a prequel show was coming out, I was so excited for it. So I did see a few of the episodes of it when it was coming out, but for some reason I never finished it, and I was sad that it was canceled because I did know that it was canceled even though I never finished the show. I saw the news that it was canceled when it was canceled, so I was a bit upset about that because the few episodes I did see, I really liked. But now that I have finally seen this show, what do I think about it? Honestly, now that I've finally seen it, wow, this show is really just a masterpiece. It is just so good. This show captivated me so much. It reminded me of how Batman Beyond was in many ways. That whole cyberpunk neon vibe, futuristic setting is one example of it. But while also at the same time we got a lone masked hero that fights under the name of a old hero, while the old original hero recruits them and is their mentor, and is basically just another example of how it makes me think of Batman Beyond, which I love. So yes, I love both Batman Beyond and Tron Uprising. And like in Batman Beyond, in Tron Uprising, the hero likes to go to clubs, spend time with his friends, and live his life while keeping his identity a secret. But putting comparisons aside, Tron Uprising was probably the better show due to how it handled everything compared to Batman Beyond. But that's not saying that Batman Beyond didn't handle things in a very, mature and complex way. It did. I just really like how Tron Uprising handled the world building and lore and everything around that. So this show, Tron Uprising, has a huge charm to it, and really, as I said, it's a masterpiece, and it got me really invested from the start till the end. So much so that it was even hard to multitask as I was watching the show due to how captivating the show was. There was moments and episodes where I couldn't multitask at all due to how good this show was. But before we get to all of that, let's just talk a little bit about the characters. So yeah, in this video, I'm definitely going to be a lot more in depth with it compared to how I was with the game and the graphic novel, because it is a show. So you are definitely spending a lot more time with the characters in that world. And I do have a lot to say about them. So for me, all of the characters were great for the most part. To be honest, the only one I didn't really like was Pavel. He was just extremely annoying and a pain. And I get that he is supposed to be like that, but yeah, I just didn't really like him. I'd say Tesla was an okay villain, and he didn't really get so much of a focus until later on in the series, but he does some really cool things and does actually fight, so it was pretty cool to see him in action. The rest, though, it was an interesting journey. So for me, for example, I didn't really like Zed at first. I thought he was annoying, and him hating the Renegade as much as he did at the start was just not helping me like him. But after he sees more about the Renegade and how good he is, he changed, and honestly, I ended up liking him a good bit. So I'd say he's my least favorite of the ones that I like. But he still, warmed up, so that was nice. And I can say the same thing or a similar thing about Paige. At first I thought, well, not that I thought, I mean, I really just didn't like her, and I thought that she was annoying. But as the episodes went on and we started to spend more and more time with her and learn more about her, I ended up really liking her a lot, and she ended up being one of my favorite characters. I also liked that I started to ship her and Beck about halfway through the show, and I think that their relationship was built so well, and I'm just so glad to see that whole development between them. And you can also, at the same time, see that Beck is slowly liking her as the show goes on, and this was done in a really realistic way too. I'm sure some people would have shipped Beck with Mara, but I never did, honestly. Instead, I had shipped Mara with Zed very early on, and I like that the show also focuses on that, and that their relationship is also a big focus. And they actually do show that they do like each other too. They just hadn't had a chance to say it to one another. Now, the journey that Mara goes through is also really cool because it's kind of the opposite of Zed's journey. But I'm glad that they did calm her down and calmed her hate down, as she was the first person to stand by the Renegade side twice. And so, she was a big force in really starting that uprising in the end. So it was really interesting to see how she went from loving the Renegade to hating him, and then calming down and saying, yeah, no, the Renegade is good. And she's like, for the second time, the person that first stands up for the Renegade. I thought that that was really good. I also loved, in general, how they handled Tron. He was voiced by the actual actor who played Tron in the movies. So that was great. And it was also interesting to see that Tron had survived Clue's attack at first. And I mean, we know this due to Tron Legacy, but seeing how he actually survived was something that was thankfully answered in this show, because in the movie it wasn't. Now, the damage done to him, though, was so sad to see, but I do think he did a really good job in teaching Beck, and I really like that the two did have their issues with each other, but both supported each other and honestly grew to be great friends. And I also want to say that Abel was also really, really cool, and it was all honestly a surprise that he knew Tron and that Tron was alive. I do like that he also knew about Beck being the renegade the entire time, or I think it was the entire time if I remember correctly, but he does know pretty early on. But I feel like it was also at the same time, though, a bit too convenient that Tron's only other friend is the renegade's boss. So I think it would have been handled a little bit better if Abel was not Beck's boss, but someone Beck meets later on and befriends or sees as a father figure a few episodes in, and gets to learn about as the episodes go on, rather than just having known him. But either way, it works out really well, and I did like how it was all handled in regards to Abel, Tron, and Beck at the same time. Now, as for the side characters, I also liked them. I thought that everyone had a unique personality and worked really well, and honestly, everyone also felt like real people, which is rare in shows, for the most part. I also like that we do get to see Cora, even if she's just in one episode, and that she was also voiced by her actress from the movie. Um, I also at the same time wanted to talk about Chris. But I think I'll leave that for my thoughts on the story, because he's important to the story. But the short version about Chris is that the dude is insane and awesome. But anyway, now let's talk about the art style. This art style has so much charm to it. It is so rare that a company will do something new and take a huge risk in doing that new art style. They could have kept the same design choices overall for the overall artwork of the show, but left it in a 2D animation, or even as a regular 3D animation. But the options that they went with, uh, both of those options, if they went with one or the other, they would still look amazing due to the nature of the show's environments and the world design in general. But they wanted to do something unique. They blended the 2D and 3D animation, and you might be thinking, that's not really anything new. Shows do that all the time, even around that time that this show came out. But the way that it is handled here is why it is so different and special. It looks amazing. Both layers of 2D and 3D work together at the same time in the same layer, basically. So that plus the world design and the actual artwork together just gives this show such a unique look that really there isn't much anything else like it. The closest I can think about at this current moment is the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and its sequel. But Tron Uprising was made before that, so the two aren't really identical in terms of animation, but there are some similarities in how they look. Honestly, it also just makes me think of the new Spider-Man animated series, that the 3D animation Spider-Man show that was released many years ago. Um, Now, I never saw or I never saw more than just a few episodes of that show, but I do hear good things about it. Sadly, that one and the Spectacular Spider-Man were also canceled. But anyway, the 3D animation here in Tron Uprising also does make me think of that particular Spider-Man show. But honestly, I think it's done way better here. But seriously, the art direction in this show is so good. There's so much depth to everything. All the colors shine and glow so beautifully. The textures look low poly, but at the same time high res. It's just a fantastic blend of computer animation and traditional animation. It really feels like you're looking at the grid but with human eyes. It's the human heart of 2D animation with the advancements of 3D computer technology. In short, it really does feel like humans and programs working on this show, just as Kevin was the human that worked with Tron, that was the program to give us the grid and giving the grid a new purpose. I also love how the aesthetic of all of this is, all of this show is the same aesthetic of Tron Legacy as well. Everything just looks so good and futuristic. Now, speaking of that, in terms of the atmosphere of Tron Legacy, another amazing charm about this show is the music. Honestly, the music for the first Tron movie, I don't even remember, but the music for Tron Legacy, though, made by one of my all-time favorite bands, which is Daft Punk, captivated me so much. And when I heard that they were making music for this movie, Tron Legacy, I was even more excited for the movie. But when hearing the music in the movie, it just perfectly captures the tone and the atmosphere of the world. Now, while the movie studio did end up making the actual visual aesthetic of the world, how things work and look and all of that, in the end, though, Daft Punk made the actual sounds of that world. They are just as important to the creation of the new grid as the movie studio was in the real universe, and as important as Kevin is in the Tron universe. Because Daft Punk's music in the movie really added the essence of it and made the world feel more realistic, as it really did make the world feel like, that particular theme and atmosphere and vibe, it all connected with each other. Like, for me, that sound and atmosphere and tone must always be connected with the world design and the atmosphere of Tron, because of the sound of the universe that Daft Punk made for this movie. So there's no other way around it. You think of Tron, you think of that sound elements that Daft Punk made. You think of the music for Tron Legacy that Daft Punk made, you think of Tron. There's no way around it. So because I'm praising that the music for Tron Uprising is so good, like the music for Tron Legacy, does that mean that they actually got Daft Punk to work on the music for Tron Uprising? Well, no, they didn't. And I knew about this when the show was announced as well. There's so much news about it, and it was sad that they wouldn't be coming back to score this show. I was honestly really upset. But again, from the few episodes I did see when I was little, I did love everything about it, even the music. But now seeing the show in full so many years later in 2024, what did I actually think of it? Like I said, the music is one of the biggest charms of this show. They didn't get Daft Punk to make it, but they did get someone who did work with Daft Punk when they were making the music for Tron Legacy. So this person not only worked with the overall aesthetic of, or not just this person, but a lot of the team for Tron Uprising worked on the overall aesthetic of the movie, ended up working on the aesthetic of the show visually, with vehicles, buildings, outfits, all of that. And also then we had the music side, where someone that did work with Daft Punk to end up creating this sound, that person was brought back to make the music for Tron Uprising. And because of that, wow, the music in this show is really, really amazing. It's definitely one of the best TV show scores I've ever heard, next to the Naruto series and the Avatar The Last Airbender series and its sequel. This show, like the music in this show is just really one of the those kinds that can be heard outside of the show. You could put it on a drive, you could put it for a workout, you can just hear it in general. The music here really captured that essence and sound of the grid that Tron Legacy was established with by Daft Punk. And I'm so grateful that they kept this tone and vibe, as like for the Avatar movies. James Cameron made a unique sound that you would know is specifically for the world of Pandora, where Daft Punk did the same thing for Tron Legacy and the Tron series in general. Now, I know I just said James Cameron made the unique sound. I know he wasn't the actual composer, but he did work in trying to, from what I know, he did work in helping get across the sounds that he wanted for the movie, and then the composers worked on that. So James Cameron is as important in getting the sounds right as is the composer for the Avatar movies. So honestly, with the worry about Daft Punk not coming back for Tron Ares, or didn't come back for Tron Uprising, or even not didn't even do the music for Tron Evolution, seeing the music for Tron Evolution and Tron Uprising, honestly, it's fine if others make music for it, as long as it fits something that is from that world. And we can see that very similar with Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. That game didn't really have music from a composer that James Cameron picked for the game, but the composer that this game studio Ubisoft picked made music that really does feel true to the movies and to that world in general. And the same can be said for the game Tron Identity, which I'll talk about in the next video. So really, it just seems like people need to not worry just because Daft Punk might not be coming back for Tron Ares, because we've seen now that as long as they are following the sounds and vibes that was established by Daft Punk, then Tron Ares soundtrack is still going to be fantastic. Now, speaking of Tron Identity, as I said, I did write my thoughts on that game, and honestly, the music really was one of the things I talked a lot about. The composer who made the music for that game was not involved, as far as I know, in Tron Legacy, Tron Evolution, or Tron Uprising. But the music for Tron Identity does feel like it is sounds we would hear from the grid. It has everything that Daft Punk set up in terms of music for this entire world. This just shows that the soundscape that Daft Punk created in Tron Legacy is amazing. And honestly, like I said, everyone that is worried about Tron Ares and how that song will be, don't worry. I'm pretty sure they're gonna do it justice, just like they did for Tron Uprising. So, going back onto focus with Tron Uprising, I'm just glad that the music here really does fit this world so well, and it does feel like a extension of the movie. There are even subtle musical cues from the movie as well, and I love that. And even some scores from the movie, I think, if not then just small sections. Overall, though, the music is truly amazing. But now, going on, what else did I like? Well, the last thing I have to talk about is the actual story in terms of things that I liked. And this at the same time will be one of the things that I don't like at the same time. So the story for Tron Uprising is set between the first two Tron movies, and it also is being set after Clue takes over the grid, which was really a interesting choice to see. And I loved seeing how Tron was hiding out this entire time and really hurt, but still trying to fight against Clue. I think that this story was paced really well and told so much so much story elements with just a few episodes. And at the same time, it's so sad because it only had 19 episodes. And in that 19 episodes, it really told so much stuff. Like the story for this show is so dense. This story really did feel like it's a story about a rebel, a renegade, or a anarchist kind of character and story, but told from the very start of their journey, as it at the same time though sadly ends when the full rebellion starts. So it felt so tense in so many moments, given that they really do put back in a really complex and complicated situation throughout the entire show, and these situations also felt really realistic in the way that they happen as well. I also thought that this was one of the biggest charms of the story. I also love that each character gets developed really well and how we do get to see Beck's reputation grow more and more. I also like that the extensive backstory that we're told, and in regards to Tron and how we see what happened to Tron and how Clue has been taking over other locations of the grid, and that the grid is not just one town or one section like Tron Legacy made it seem to be, because it kind of made it seem in Tron Legacy that it was just one town that was the central hub of the grid, and then there's the Outlands where things for the grid doesn't really work, and then a smaller section maybe for the ISOs where the ISOs came to be. But with Tron Evolution and Tron Betrayal and now Tron Uprising, we get to see that there are so many other sections of the grid, and this show really shows at the same time that Clue didn't just take over the central hub of the grid, where the portal is at, but he also took over many other sections of the grid, probably the entire grid as a whole. So I thought that was amazing to see. I also like that we even get to see Tron fully back to normal in the last episode, and his return was epic. And I also love that there are a few episodes that does focus on the start of Tron getting hurt till the very start of this particular show, with Tron being rescued by Chris and him taking Chris as the first renegade. And I thought that those particular story elements and focus was really well done. And honestly, Chris is amazing. He is brutal and he is smart, and I think his relationship with Beck was also really well done, and honestly it added so much to his story as a whole and to Tron as well, in learning from his own mistakes. Also, again, Chris is just an awesome character, and for me, he sounds like Jack from Jack and Dexter, or Korn from the Jack and Dexter series as well. His voice is just a very cool, raspy, renegade kind of voice. And sadly, while I was watching the show, I was sure, because the voice is so similar, I was sure that it was either the voice actor of Jack or Korn from the Jack and Dexter series. I have recently replayed those and I did write thoughts on those and I do want to review them. Um, and actually, right now, I've been meaning to replay Jack and Dexter and the Lost Frontier. I did like that game a lot when it came out. A lot of people hated it, but I always enjoyed it. And I never played Dexter. But they just added it to the PlayStation subscription services, so I'm so glad. I really want to replay it. I still own them on the PS2, and I was going to replay it that way, but since it's now on the PS5, I'll just play it there. But yeah, so I really did think that the voice actor for Chris was either Jack or Korn from the Jack and Dexter series because the voice is so similar. But when I looked to see if it was, it wasn't the same voice actor of either of them. They have two different voice actors as well, but yeah, I do wish it was one of them. Anyway, the story was told so well and it expanded even on its own plot as well. So I also loved that even though this was on Disney XD, they really were not afraid of using words like kill and actually killing people in brutal ways, even though they're programs, they're not, they can get away with it because they're not humans. But they still kill people in brutal ways. And this show was really dark and really mature. I also love that the people we follow are young adults in their 20s or 30s, or at least that's what it feels like. I mean, Terry from Batman Begins also felt like that age group, 20s to 30s, but he was not. Instead, he was a teenager, and I think he was like 16. So what do I know? Because for me, Terry did not seem like a 16-year-old at all. But, everyone in Tron Uprising does definitely feel like they're in their 20s or 30s. And yeah, maybe they can be because these are programs. They don't really have ages. But the point is, I like that they handle these characters and these story elements in a very grounded and mature way. This story really does have people fighting for their lives, fighting against a tyrant, and the consequences that come from all of that. I also love that this show talked about how programs are and how they are purposed for something, but their coding can be changed so their purpose can be another thing, or that they learn a new code to do some other things. I like how Beck fought against his own coding to be a mechanic to fight against Clue's army, not just due to them invading his home, but also for killing one of his friends right in front of him. But on top of this, one of the biggest charms about this show is that it is canon, and it expands on so much of the lore and the world of Tron. Honestly, this show expands so much on the world. That's probably one of the few spin-offs that I've seen that really expands on things we've never seen before and expands on what we have and what we know. That is one of the biggest charms about this, and I keep saying that a lot, but this show just has so much charm to it. I, for example, always wondered, how does a city in the grid really look like? Because in the movie we didn't really get to see much of that. And I always wonder, how do programs live? Do they have homes? Do they have gangs? Are they all just doing what they are programmed to do? Do they have these kinds of cars or other kinds of modes of transportation? How does this particular element of a identity disk work? Do they go on dates? There was just so many questions that from seeing the movies in my mind I would always wonder about. Because even though we are brought to the grid and in the movies it's explained so well and you get to see so much, you only get glimpses of some of the world design because the movies are focused just on the main plot, and having some of the world design be important to the atmosphere and tone of the movie, but not going all the way, just giving you a little taste of what that world can be like so that you can try to see more of what it is. And, thankfully, because Tron Legacy came out, it got expanded so much more than what it was in the original Tron, but leaving answers or questions for so many other things because it developed so much more. So thankfully, we have Tron Identity, Tron Uprising, Tron Evolution, and Tron Betrayal because these really work with Tron Legacy to clarify all of those things that you are left wondering about because of Tron Legacy. So all of them really do work so well together. And thankfully, this show is, like I said, a great example of that. We do get to see how programs live. They do go on dates, they have viruses and sketchy back alley shops as well. We even see that they have docks and transportation hubs. We see how the world around them is designed for them as programs. We even see how they are at work and hanging out in places. We see gangs and many other ways to get around the city as well. There's just so much, and I mean so much world building in this show that it is so impressive. And not just world building, but world expansion as well. So much of it is visually shown, but in a way that's done better than the movie did. When I say the movie, in this case, Tron Legacy, because as I said, Tron Legacy did visually show a lot of these elements, but kind of like just a far off glance at it and leaving you wanting to know more about that. That's what I just explained. So this show does show things visually, but does so in a much closer and better ways. So yeah, it's just really amazing. And they also add in so many new things to this show too that just makes the world feel even more alive and even more thought out than any of the first two movies made the world feel like. This show really is an amazing example of how to do a spinoff right and how to expand on it so much that it benefits the overall world and the overall characters of the movies. You know, a lot of people think about multimedia stories or expanded universes or expanded stories, you know, set in the universe. And a lot of time, a lot of these shows are cool, yeah, but they don't really introduce new things or fully expand on concepts and things that the movies couldn't because it's a movie and it doesn't have the full runtime to expand on those things. For example, a lot of people love the Star Wars shows, any Star Wars shows, and yes, a lot of them do advance a lot of the lore elements, but the Star Wars shows for me, for the most part, are all really just bland. It focuses, I think, usually on the wrong things and doesn't always, not always, sometimes they do, but not always do they really expand on a lot of the lore elements of Star Wars. You know, I would say that the one that I liked the most of the new Star Wars shows was probably the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, because for me, that felt like it was the movies. The Han Solo show, or sorry, the Han Solo movie and the Rogue One movie, they were just okay. Because they follow the same elements that the shows kind of follow. And it's like, yes, I love Star Wars, but I prefer the movies over any of the shows with the exception of Obi-Wan Kenobi show, because that did feel like Star Wars episode 3.5 for sure, because it had that element in it as well. But yeah, so I'm not just trying to complain about Star Wars. I'm just using Star Wars as an example because it is probably one of the biggest, how can I say it? One of the biggest pop culture thing that has so much expanded works, and a lot of it is just dull, in my opinion. So it's like it's just being made just to get money because people, you know, the companies know that people will watch it for the most part, except when it's done with care, such as with Obi-Wan and expanding on so much stuff, then you really get to see that development and the care and passion put into it. So that is what I'm trying to explain here. It's that when a show does what Tron Uprising did, and it's a multimedia show, or not just Tron Uprising, but you know, everything in regards to the multimedia aspect of the Tron series, those are being handled so well and with so much care. And you can really tell because it expands on so much stuff, leaving the movies as the central piece. And I think that that is the most important thing. If you want to have like a side adventure unrelated to the movies, such as you do with Tron Uprising, sure, but still have the movies be a focus there in a way, just as Tron Uprising did with having Tron there, but the focus isn't fully on Tron. It's more just stopping Clue. And you don't need to even watch Tron Legacy to enjoy this show because of how well it stands on its own. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of multimedia things, they just go off of the title. They don't really always stand on their own. and because they're trying to appease to that particular group. Whereas when it's a multimedia project that is done with care to stand on its own, leaving a few elements from the source, which in this case is the Tron movies, it really is allowed to stand on its own, really allows to expand on that world, and really gives you enough context about the movies where you can just understand what is going on and watch and enjoy the show as it is. So that is something that is done really, really well. Again, I'm not trying to be bashing on the multimedia works for Star Wars, but at the same time, I do have to use that as an example. But anyway, back to the script, because that was not in the script. I just love this particular show so much, and it does multimedia correctly. All of the Tron stuff does multimedia correctly. But at the same time, there are some things I have to complain about in regards to Tron Uprising. First, the biggest complaint that I have is, as I said earlier, the show ends with the Resistance officially forming. That's cool and all, but I do wish we got to see more of that as the show went on, instead of just a few people helping back out here and there as we did throughout all of the episodes of the show. That wasn't the full rebellion. That was just planting the seeds of the rebellion. We only get to see the full rebellion begin its formation at the very end of the series. The next big complaint that I have is that I don't like that we're not shown what really happened to Tron after he is healed at the end of the series. We do know that he does get repurposed and becomes Rinsler because of Tron Legacy. And I also do love that this show ends up showing us that programs can be against the repurposing as well, as we saw with Cutler, which explains why Tron was able to fight back in Tron Legacy, because they can fight their repurposing as well. So it expands on, again, the things that Tron Legacy set up in a visual and story-driven way, which is amazing. So that helped clarify why Tron was able to fight his repurpose and reprogramming. But again, the issue here is, at the end of this show, Tron is 100% back to normal, fully healed, and ready to fight with Beck at the end of the show. And then it just ends. So I really wish that it would have ended with him maybe being at a 100% and fully repurposed and becoming Rizzler, instead of Beck saving him from being repurposed, and then him being changed to have the name Rinsler at the very end of the show. I think that would have been a lot better, because this show did answer a lot of questions from Tron Legacy, and it left so many questions open for answers that we needed to fully connect with Tron Legacy, and that is being, how did Tron become Rinsler? Because again, he escaped his repurposement, was damaged, became a renegade, got a new renegade, got a second renegade after the first one became brutal, and he was basically just trying to recover, right? And then he's fully healed and fully back to normal, ready to fight by the renegade side, and still a good guy. But then Tron Legacy comes and he's repurposed and going by the name of Rinsler and has no memories of who he is as Tron. So how do we get from that ending to there? And that is one of the biggest open-ended questions that needed to be addressed in the show, but wasn't. And I'm sure that this particular thing, plus many of the other questions, would have been revealed in a second season, or however many seasons it would take to tell this story, up until it reaches Tron Legacy. But sadly, the show was cancelled. So while this is a complaint, it is not the show's fault, because they did have ideas and plot details for the second season already planned out, but the show was cancelled right before they went into production. Now, another complaint that I have is, while the show is great, it could have used a bit more downtime for Beck and shown us a little bit more of how he lives his life and the things he likes more often, as I feel like for all of his friends, they do a good job at showing all of that, but not really for Beck. And I also wish that we got more from Clue. Now, I think they could have expanded a little bit more on the ISOs than it did in the show as well, and how the ISOs were and how Clue was with them. because we didn't really get so much about Clue, and we didn't even really get so much about the ISOs. But again, those were still expanded on Tron Evolution and Tron Betrayal. But even so, I do think the aftermath of Tron Betrayal and Tron Evolution needed to be addressed here as well, and giving us more of a essence and feeling of how the ISOs impacted that world. And also, one of the other big complaints that I have is that I wish we learned what happened to Beck. I mean, we can assume that, you know, with the series ending and the way that it ended with Clue coming directly to Beck's town with a huge army, we can assume that they all fight. It doesn't go very well for Beck, and Tron ends up getting captured, repurposed, and becomes Rinsler. And maybe Beck dies or gets repurposed, or he's maybe a prisoner stuck under Clue's army, unable to fight anymore for whatever reason. You know, that's kind of my headcanon for this. It's that at the end of the series, when Clue appears on Beck's town with an army, the army is way too big. The uprising isn't as big and as strong. So the uprising loses. Clue takes over that town completely. He finds Tron, repurposes Tron, and something happens with Beck. He either dies or is repurposed. Because for me, that is what makes sense for it to connect directly into Tron Legacy. And when I say connect directly into Tron Legacy, I'm not saying that this isn't canon, because again, it is. I'm saying connects as in showing us the missing part that got from the ending of that show to the start of Tron Legacy. That's what I mean by connect. That missing part. But yeah, in the end, I'm just upset that that wasn't shown, because it is really a huge, insane cliffhanger in how this show ends. But yeah, those were all my biggest complaints. I really do think that this show was still a masterpiece and is still a masterpiece, because it really did tell a realistic story in a very mature way while expanding so much on the movies. There really is so much charm here in this entire series. Now, I do have one last thing to complain about, and it's not the show itself. So the thing that I want to complain about is that I am sad that Disney literally wanted this show to die, even if it had so many amazing reviews and people really did like it, and it was doing pretty decent from what I understand. It upsets me so much that Disney purposely kept making changes so that the show died. And what do I mean by Disney purposely making changes to just have the show die? What do I mean by that? So, as I said, they did start working on season 2, and in fact, Daft Punk and Cora were even set to appear in season 2 from a leaked plot details we got some years ago. But Disney just randomly told them the show was cancelled. And now you're wondering, well, how does that make it so that Disney was changing things so that the show would die? Well, let me explain it to you. So this is a big rant and my biggest complaint about this show, because most of my complaints with the show is not the show's fault. It is because of how Disney handled this. Disney went out of their way to literally kill the show by moving it to very late hours, like 11 p.m. hours for new episodes, not announcing when new episodes were releasing, and just kept screwing up the release of the show and when it would air as well. And this is just so upsetting. It's like Disney always wants Tron to be good, and it does decent and good, but then they themselves decide to shove it down to the depths of their vault because it's not doing good enough for them, even though it is doing really, really well. And good by most standards in general. So this series as a whole, not just Tron Uprising, the Tron series as a whole is considered niche, and Disney really is the ones that do not let it shine. Again, the series does well and decent overall, but Disney just doesn't think that it's enough. That's why it took 30 years for it to get a sequel to the original Tron movie, and that's why it's taken over 10 years for a third Tron movie, with Tron Ares coming out next year in 2025. They wanted a big sci-fi series. They had one with Tron, yet then they bought Star Wars and focused more on that than this amazing series that they have. Again, I talked about Star Wars earlier, and that part wasn't in the script, but this part is. I love Star Wars, even the sequel trilogy. For me, The Rise of Skywalker is one of my favorite Star Wars movies, tied with Episode 3. So I know that's probably going to drive a lot of people crazy because everyone hates The Rise of Skywalker, but I loved it. But yeah, so when Disney bought Star Wars, they decided to completely put aside everything regarding Tron and focus on Star Wars. And that's fine, but they can't do two big sci-fi series at the same time. So the fact that Disney purposely killed this show and used the excuse of it was canceled due to low viewer count, even though they purposely made it so that fewer people could see it, it is extremely upsetting given that it was doing so well before Disney interfered and started messing up with the release schedule, because it really was getting amazing reviews. And I heard that the reason why Disney kept moving it to such a late time for new episodes and weren't marketing it as much was because they didn't really know how to market this show, given how mature it was and that it was being released on Disney XD. I saw an interview a little while ago, a few days before I wrote this whole review, where I think it was the showrunner of the show said that if the show was released 5 or 6 years later from when it did, he felt like it definitely would have been given a new season, as it could have been released on streaming, as people would have been able to access it more, and Disney wouldn't really be able to sabotage it the way that they did. Honestly, for me, Tron Uprising joins the ranks of 2012's Thundercats show, which Cartoon Network did the exact same thing to, and other shows such as The Spectacular Spider-Man, Wolverine and the X-Men, Tower Prep, Sliders, Symbiotic Titan, the OA, the Scream TV show, Dark Matter, which was a show on Sci-Fi, and a bunch of other shows, as shows that were all amazingly good but got cancelled due to the stupid studios deciding to not continue those stories for whatever dumb reason that they had, even though the shows were doing really, really good. So there are a few examples, that I skipped over, and I'm looking at the script right now. Another example is Sense8. And another example is Young Justice. But at least these two examples, Sense8 and Young Justice, at least they were able to come back with a movie and a few extra seasons to finalize the show sometime after they were originally cancelled. Now, all those other shows that I talked about, I have no idea why it wasn't finalized. And yeah, so these companies really need to say if they will or will not continue a show ahead of time so that the people involved can at least conclude it in a way that makes sense, even if it's halfway through the show, not when they are starting development for the second season. Or if they don't want to do that and they do straight out just cancel it, at least have the studio work with other companies to conclude this canceled story via a book, a comic, a graphic novel, a movie, or a video game, especially since the series here, Tron Uprising, was doing so good, and all of these other series that I talked about also were doing really, really good. In terms of Tron Uprising though, there is still hope. I mean, they revived X-Men the animated series from the 90s, which was, also cancelled, I think it was cancelled. I did recently watch all of the original 90s animated series X-Men movie. I just don't remember if the development for it was cancelled or not, but it did also end in a cliffhanger. But yes, they did revive that show in a comic book set between the original show ending and the sequel show ending, and now with the sequel show X-Men 97 continuing from when the last episode of that original show ended to basically resolve its cancelled plot. And now X-Men 97 is truly fantastic. If you guys haven't seen that show, definitely watch it. So what I'm saying is, if they can revive X-Men the animated series, a show from the 90s, to basically bring it back and it do so well on Disney Plus, why can't they do that for a more recent show that falls in line with a movie series that is about to get a brand new movie next year? And that would be with Tron Uprising. So yeah, honestly, we could maybe get a conclusion to this story given that this series is still alive, so there is hope for the story in Tron Uprising to be concluded in some way. maybe we will at least hear about what happened in this particular story in Tron Ares, even if it's just summarized in a few sentences by one character. The point is, Disney has a great chance here to fix their mistakes with this show and the Tron series as a whole. I also think that they're starting to realize that Tron is important. It is a pop culture icon in a way. If you look at the original Tron movie, that was the first movie to fully use CGI for most of the movie. I'm pretty sure there was a movie here or there that did use CGI before the first Tron movie, but in a very subtle way, and wasn't the focus of the movie. But Tron was the first movie where just about everything in it was CGI, and with real characters in it as well, of course. And it really pushed technology forward. It really was ahead of its time in terms of its topic and depiction of computers and everything. Tron, in general, the Tron series is always really ahead of its time. So I think that Disney is starting to see just the big pop culture icon that Tron is, because Tron, whenever something related to Tron comes out, it always influences a lot of the movies that comes out after it in terms of CGI, atmosphere, music, all of these things, and even film design as well. And the same was also true with Tron Legacy when that came out. Not to the extent that maybe Avatar did, because Avatar came out the year before Tron Legacy, but still, it did help influence movies coming out after that period of time. So I do think that Disney is starting to realize that Tron is a very big pop cultural icon in a way, even though it's still considered a niche series. And I think that they're also realizing that the Tron series is also really relatable to the world in general with how technology is, as I said earlier. I mean, they can tell just so many stories in the Tron series because of this, because of the technology and creativity that is put within the Tron series and how it relates with technology within our real life. So I think that Disney is also finally realizing what they have with Tron, and it seems they are really giving this series a bigger focus now. We just had a brand new theme park attraction based on the series open up in Disneyland, I think last year. And they have so much merch now for Tron in Disneyland as well. We also got the Tron Identity game last year, and the company that made that game, and again, the game was fantastic, they have said that they are working on a second game as well. And on top of this, the biggest thing is that Tron 3 is finally being made as Tron Ares, and it's set to release in 2025. Now, at the time of recording this particular, writing this particular script, there was a release date set for December 2025, according to IMDb. So while I was excited for that, I was worried if that was going to be the final date, because then it would be very bad for Tron, because Disney moved Avatar 3's release date from December of this year, 2024, to December 2025. So I am so glad that next year we're getting both Tron and Avatar at the same time as well. And just like they did very similarly to when Tron Legacy released. Now I hope we can get something related to Xenoblade as well, because then it will really be the same thing again. But I'm just worried that, well, at the same time, we did just get Tron Identity, I just remember that, plus a new Xenoblade game, plus a new Avatar movie and game all at the same time too. So yes, it seems like Avatar and Tron are always releasing something alongside with Xenoblade, so I love that. But what I'm worried about is that if Tron Ares is set to release in December, it really felt like Disney was purposely gonna be trying to sabotage Tron again, as they have all the time something related to Tron comes out. Now, the reason for that is because obviously everyone's gonna go watch Avatar 3, because yeah, it's Avatar 3, and I love Avatar. I'm not trying to say that Tron can't compete with Avatar, but I'm saying it's Avatar. So that would be very, very brutal for Tron if they release it in December. But thankfully, after I wrote this script, They did give the release date for Tron Ares, and it is set to come out a couple of months before December. So thankfully, we don't need to worry about Avatar attacking Tron. So I'm glad that both are going to be able to stand and not have to compete with each other. And in other words, it wouldn't even be a competition because we both know, not both of us, but all of us that are, me and all of you that are watching and hearing this, we all know that Avatar would outdo Tron because it's Avatar. So, yeah, I'm glad that they noticed that and did decide to change Tron's release date and made it a lot earlier than Avatar. Now, going back to the script, another thing that I am worried about is that Disney might not want to continue the series after Tron Ares. So I hope that if that is their plan, that they do not end this movie in a cliffhanger and just end the series properly. I'm also worried that if the movie won't address what happened at the end of Tron Legacy, or what happened to Kevin or Sam and Korra, or the whole Flynn lives thing that they were teasing at the end of Tron Legacy when that came out with the next day epilogue thing. But thankfully, though, they did confirm, that was part of the script. Outside of the script now, they did confirm after this that Tron Ares will be addressing the ending of Tron Legacy. So I'm glad that they're going to be at least addressing that, but please address what happened at the end of Tron Uprising. Please. So what I do know about Tron Ares is that it's going to be about a program trying to leave the grid and a program actually coming to the real world, just like Korra did, but Korra was an ISO, not a program, so that will be interesting to see. But please address the things from the cliffhanger that Tron Legacy left. And again, I'm sure that they will, especially given that they are saying that they are going to. And also because of them calling it Tron 3 and stylizing it as TR3N, which is similar to when they were making Tron Legacy by calling it Tron 2 and also stylizing it as TR2N during its production. But either way, I'm just worried given how Disney has treated Tron in the past with the ups and downs that we've had with Tron 3 during its development for over 10 years now, because this movie wasn't just recently in development, it's been in development since Tron Legacy came out. So with the ups and downs that we've had with it, I'm just very worried how Disney is going to be handling this. But I'm being hopeful that things will be addressed, and that hopefully things for Tron Uprising will be addressed in Tron Ares as well, and some other things as well. I really just hope that this new movie, if it does have a cliffhanger ending, that they do already have Tron 4 planned and it's already starting development right away and we'll get Tron 4 pretty soon. But if they don't plan on making a Tron 4, unless the ticket sales for Tron Ares is really good, then at least make it so that Tron Ares does not have a cliffhanger ending and that can serve as an ending to the series as well. So at least it all gets closed out good. Or at least have the ending where things are closed out good, but there are room for future stories, but not giant cliffhanger things. Anyway, sorry for my big rant over there. This show, Tron Uprising, is a masterpiece, and I really do hope Disney is serious about giving Tron the chance it deserves. Hopefully, we will get more spin-offs like this and games with the release of Tron Ares, and hopefully we do get the sequel to Tron Identity real soon, because that game also went on a cliffhanger, a massive one. But overall, I am just so excited to see what comes next for Tron. If I have to give this particular show a ranking, I'd give it an 8 out of 10, or even almost a 9 out of 10 basically. Let's just give it an 8.5 out of 10 just because of the issues that Disney did with it. But yeah, this show is so good. If you guys have not watched Tron Uprising, please go watch this show. Please, this show is amazing. But yes, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review and my thoughts on Tron Uprising and the charm it has. Let me know what you guys think about this show and any of the other Tron stories and which story you like the most. And let me know what you guys think about Tron Ares and the way that Disney handled Tron Uprising and the Tron series as a whole. with all that said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day.